So tell us a little bit about how that conference call went and why it's so important.
Yeah. So, Bloom thinks he is getting on this Zoom call so that there can be a scientific collaboration into the question of these missing sequences. And instead, he is hit with this wall of hostility about why he's undertaking this research, how it's unethical to even examine these sequences if the Chinese researchers wanted them deleted. Well, I think for me, reporting this, the key takeaway is really that the NIH, which through a subgrant funded research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, never seemed particularly interested in getting to the bottom of where COVID came from.
Hello there. I'm Stephen Cutie, and today we're going to be talking about some systemic issues in research science that are underscored by recent reporting from Vanity Fair. So, as you just saw in that clip, Vanity Fair recently reported that there was a high level meeting early on during the pandemic between evolutionary biologist Jesse Bloom and NIH leadership regarding a preprint publication that Dr. Bloom had authored that was looking into possible origins for COVID-19, including the possibility of like a lab leak origin. And the newsworthy part of the story was the apparent hostility that the preprint author met from the NIH officials, namely Doctors Fauci and Collins, because in this preprint, Dr. Bloom raised concerns that after both China's government and the NIH took down early viral sequences that they previously posted online, he was kind of flagging that as possibly problematic or issues with transparency. But instead of addressing Bloom's concerns, in the meeting, Vanity Fair reported that the NIH officials actually seem to kind of want to marginalize any discussion of the possibility of a lab leak. And that's kind of, no matter how heavily you weigh the evidence in favor of a COVID lab leak origin, I think there's a larger implication of the story there about transparency in academic science and research science, because again, these larger systemic issues, especially in biomedical research, especially around transparency, really come into focus there. I'm a research scientist by training. My background is evolutionary biology, and I got my PhD in bioengineering. I spent basically the last half decade in the very same kind of living in the very same biomedical research world that the COVID pandemic and all these conversations have sort of peeled back the public curtain on. And in that time, I published my research, I wrote grant applications for the NIH. I went through both sides of the publication review process, both as a reviewer and as the reviewee. And from my time on the inside, I kind of understand why research science is having this credibility crisis right now, because as much as science is supposed to be kind of open and transparent, it also has this dark side that can sometimes drive scientists towards secrecy, which is all kind of because of these insane pressures created by the publication review process and like the publisher perish mentality that research scientists face nowadays, where again there's so much competition and fear of getting scooped and kind of beating the publication review process, getting the sexiest data out first before anyone else without getting scooped, that scientists are being overworked, kind of oversights are being made, and that's one of the reasons we have this reproducibility crisis in science, where you have like significant fractions in some surveys up to like a third of published research that has data in it that can't be reproduced by other scientists, which is a big red flag in science. And so how do you start fixing these problems? How do, like these issues with the reproducibility crisis and transparency and this incentive for secrecy in science? Are there ways to fix that? And there's been a lot of conversations within the scientific community about reforms that might make a difference and kind of fix some of the incentives that are driving that. So maybe something like tenure reform, right? Because way back in the day when tenure was invented in the Middle Ages and people died at the ripe old age of 30, tenure was a great way to protect academic and intellectual integrity from retaliation by the state and by kings. But nowadays, kind of the way that tenure in academia works, it kind of creates this front end massive hyper competition for tenure track positions that you need publications and you need more and sexier publications than anyone else to get into. At the same time, something like open reviews would be a way to peel back the curtain on the publication review process and hopefully make sure that more published research is reproducible. Because with open reviews, which some journals already do, like eLife already uses open reviews, basically the reviewer comments also get published along with the paper themselves, so you can kind of see everyone's work. You can see what concerns the reviewers raise and how the authors of the paper and the research responded to them. So those are some ways to sort of start injecting more transparency back into research science, which is important, especially now after COVID, kind of with the issues that were raised and the way that the credibility of scientists and research has suffered. We really need reforms like, or we could really use reforms like maybe termed tenure or open reports as the norm for the industry standard to really make sure that the public trusts science again and to really counterbalance against the incentive for secrecy.